realized that I hadn't gotten called, and I thought, oh my gosh, after our last meeting, though, it was a whole laundry list of things that had to be on the agenda, and then I went back through it, and I think I missed like one, but it's on here now. So why don't we go ahead and get started right away with traffic concerns? Councilmember Davies had some concerns he wanted to bring up, and we can figure out what to do about that. So go ahead, Mark.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, great. Using a different computer. So I was approached by a resident in the 2nd Ward that lives up behind the college. I forget which road that they live on. And they've been concerned about the number of residents and students that come down the very steep drive there. What is that? Is that Blodgett there? Yeah, exactly. And so they reached out to ask what could we do about slowing cars down. Again, this wasn't simply a student problem. It was a student problem. It was a resident problem. It was an everyone problem. And they were saying both up and down, it's pretty fast. She actually told me in another conversation that she had a conversation with one of the OPD, or not OPD, but the SUNY Oneonta Police Department members who clocked somebody at 88 miles an hour coming down that hill. So clearly they're moving pretty quick. So it got me thinking, what are the strategies that we can use? I mean, street signs that say the speed limit aren't helping. What can we do to be able to try to calm the traffic a little bit, slow it down? What are strategies we can use? I know this is something that when we looked at the Complete Streets a number of years ago and adopted that was the kind of approach, is how do you calm the traffic using other strategies? And I know Greg certainly has a lot of ideas on that. So that was the issue that kind of brought it to my attention. And when I raised it, I think a number of you also spoke up and said that you had your own concerns. So I guess I'm interested in exploring what are the strategies that we can utilize to maybe calm traffic there and a number of other different places in the city.
Okay, before we go to that, does anybody else have any other traffic concerns that they wanted to bring up that's different than what Mark said? Go ahead, Len.
So, first off, though, what was the street? You said Blodgett, Mark, and then Dave, it kind of cut over, so I didn't know which street. Is it Blodgett?
Yes. Yep.
And I've expressed concern about Lettuce Highway as it backs Grand Street there in my ward.
Wait, what, Mark? What do you mean, Lettuce Highway or?
Yeah, Lettuce. Well, the complaints that I have are coming from the Grand Street residents. The backs of their houses, they back up to Lettuce Highway there, and so the complaints that I've had, and there aren't a whole lot of houses. Essentially, it's been one resident that's complained, but often enough for a few people, that the noise and the speed. And I think it's obviously noise you can't do much about, but speed is a concern. And I think other people have mentioned it. I know anecdotally that I've found that people aren't looking at that as being, I think it's 30 miles an hour at that juncture. And I think people presume coming in off of I-88 that they're still at a 55, 65.
Well, Dick Miller used to call that the Oneonta's runway.
Right, and that's yeah, and that would be something that the
good reason
complaint to me would concur with.
Okay, Greg, do you have any insight into either of these?
Oh, Dave, just real quick, I didn't go yet. I didn't go yet.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Go ahead.
So Chestnut Street is the major concern for us in the 5th Ward. I've taken several complaints about the speed of traffic. And we have several crosswalks, and it's with the bend right there at the intersection of Fonda Avenue and Chestnut Street. There's concern. Greg and I, we've started a dialogue about this concern from not only myself, but several citizens and constituents in the 5th Ward. So we'd like to see some kind of, I guess the new terminology is traffic calming. But we'd like to see something change in the speed limit and how the crosswalks are approached. In fact, I think there's a woman that's been videotaped picking up the crosswalk signs and throwing them to the side.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I haven't gotten a copy of that video yet, but I don't know if runners heard about this or not.
Well, I know when we first put them out, was it a couple of years ago, maybe? I think every last one of them got thrown aside. So I think we're making progress. But still, man. Okay. Greg, do you have any input here on any of this? Any ideas? I mean, I've always asked temporary speed bumps, and I know we've always said we can't, but I was just up in Rochester a couple weeks ago, and they threw temporary speed bumps all throughout the downtown neighborhoods. And I know in the winter it's really problematic to have those, but it really slows the traffic down. I don't know if that would be an answer for Chestnut Street, though.
Yeah, speed bumps are illegal to be installed. There would be a pretty big liability concern. On an actual public street, I'm not sure how they do that in Rochester, how they get away with that, but I think if you put in an actual traditional speed bump, if there was any sort of an accident, the city would be in a bad position there. But there are things called speed humps and speed tables where they're a little bit bigger. They're, you go up a more gentle slope instead of just a bump in the road, and then there's a flat surface, and it goes back down again. They're designed for the type of traffic. I don't think even Chestnut Street or a heavier traffic road like that would be the right application for that. That's something you typically see more in a slower.
So it's possible what I saw was a speed hump, but I think most of us would refer to them all the same thing as a speed bump. But
yeah,
so it's possible what they're doing. It is doable.
it's possible depending on the situation. Certainly not on Chestnut Street or a main like arterial type of collector road like that with a lot of traffic. That's
Right.
I don't think that's the right application, but it's something we could look at it in certain other places. The thing with speed, certainly everyone understands if you just put up a speed limit that's lesser, if you reduce the speed limit to 25 miles per hour, it's really not going to change people's actions very much. To Mark's point about Lettuce Highway, it's huge. It is built like a highway. So people feel like it's a highway, regardless of whether they're paying attention and see the 30-mile-per-hour sign. They're going to go, 65 miles an hour right out of the gate. So that's where traffic calming measures, like whether you narrow the streets or you put the curb bump outs at crosswalks, things like that, or if you have street trees or street parking, curbside parking, those sort of things that just make you feel like you need to go a little bit slower, drive a little bit more careful. It feels like a more of a pedestrian or street level environment, not so much a thoroughfare. On Chestnut Street, there's some parking, but it is a long stretch. It's kind of a main collector for the city.
No.
Not a lot.
He's on a meeting. Here we go.
It's just, I think the feel is that you can go faster there. It's kind of a challenge to really address that. But there are things we can research different options and kind of look at this and come back with some ideas. Gary,
Brennick had his hand up first, Gary, and then I'll come to you.
Yeah, just very quickly, I wondered whether or not we have anything like an inventory of some of those digital signs that we might be able to move from location to location to see if we can mitigate some of the speed. I know I'm always aware of a digital readout that typically puts me 20 miles an hour over what I'm supposed to be, and I come right down with it. There was a chief on the line there. 10 miles an hour is what I was thinking, actually. But the bottom line of it is that those things actually do work. I don't know if we have a few of them around that we might be able to move around.
No, we don't have any extras right now. The police used to have a speed trailer. I don't think that's working anymore. Is it, Doug?
No, that trailer's probably 20 years old and the technology shot on it. It's old. It used to, besides have a digital display, used to record it all, and all the it's just old and wore out.
Yeah, we did install. They could be moved, but we installed them permanently on Chestnut Street, heading westbound before that bend, before Fonda, and East Street, north and southbound, and West Street southbound, just above Hartwick Drive. I'm not sure if those have made a permanent difference or not, but like you said, Mark, you do notice that.
Yeah.
They
And I
would-
know the colleges have them, and I don't know if they have an abundance of them that they might be able to share as a thought.
I suppose I could ask. I don't know. Usually you buy those,
Always ask.
leave them, but
Well, how about this? Well, first, Gary, you had your hand up. What did you want to add?
I don't know if everybody's aware, probably not, that New York State law does not permit cities to lower speed limits below 30 miles per hour on public highways. So this is something that NICOM has advocated for a number of years in cities being permitted to lower speed limits below 30 miles per hour unsuccessfully. So we cannot reduce speed limits below 30 miles per hour on any of our public streets.
Well, the public highway or in the neighborhoods or both?
All on any of the public streets. 30 miles per hour is the lowest we are permitted to have our speed limits.
I thought we were at 25 up on Blodgett for some reason. But maybe I'm wrong. Mark,
Yeah, thanks. Greg, you mentioned crosswalks. Is that proven to have any type of impact on calming things, just crosswalks alone? Because that's actually what the resident suggested, is at the end of all those roads that terminate on Blodgett was to have a sidewalk that goes across the other side of the street where there's actually a sidewalk that runs up the hill. Is that something that's proven to have an impact on traffic?
I wouldn't say that just having a crosswalk alone, but usually when you install a mid-block crosswalk like that, you have the bright yellow signs. You might put one of those in-street pedestrian signs like we're talking about that get run over or tossed to the side. It just draws more attention to it. And I think that has a positive effect. At least people are paying attention, and that's directing people that are walking as to where to cross. So then cars can anticipate where they might, interact with pedestrians. I don't know that it'll reduce the speed between the crosswalks. It's been proven with many studies. You look at Center Street, my neighbor, I see it, I live in Center Street, people will tend to gun it after the stop sign to get to the next stop sign. And then they have to stop again, they roll through that, and then they gun it to the next one. So sometimes stop signs alone, they shouldn't be used purely to try to slow speeds, because what you end up getting a lot of times is just people trying to go a little bit faster between them to make up for lost time. So I think the same principle kind of goes with the crosswalks. They might slow down and pay attention if there's pedestrians looking to cross, but I'm not so convinced that they'll slow speeds on a regular basis.
Yeah, go ahead, Len.
So out of the technology that's there today, so if stop signs don't do it, lights don't do it, crosswalks don't do it, do cameras that the police department issue tickets, do they do it?
I don't think that enforcement's going to change behavior unless it's really there all the time, where, the same people that live there are noticing. Obviously that can happen, but I think the best solution is really, I can go back and look at the different options that are out there for street redesigns that can impact the character of the street, how you feel when you're driving. That's the only thing that's going to change driver instincts. If you have a narrower street, Center Street with our new curb, we're actually narrowing the street by a foot. With parked cars along there, you get a little bit narrower feeling. You're going to maybe go a little bit slower, pay a little more attention to what you're doing. Something like Blodgett, maybe having a curb bump out at the intersections with a crosswalk will have that constriction, and you feel like you want to slow down a little bit. Maybe some more trees planted along one side. Those sort of things I think ultimately have an effect on driver instincts. Of course, if the police are constantly enforcing a particular street, then people will catch on, and that'll have an effect. But I don't think that, I'll let Doug speak to that. But I don't think his resources allow him to constantly enforce on all the locations that are concerns.
Since I'm going to suggest, and Gary, I saw you put your hand up. I'm going to suggest since we have a lot of items to discuss today, and there's no apparent solution for this right at the moment, we put this off till the next meeting and let Greg research some items, maybe even give us a price on what it would cost to purchase speed humps. But just to give us some options, see what's there, and then we can discuss it more. But before we move on, Gary?
Just quickly, Mark Drenick had mentioned that the electronic speed signs show you your speed are effective. We don't have them. It may be the most effective thing to do is to invest in a few more of those signs. They can't be that outrageously expensive, and if they're going to save a life, they're well worth it.
Okay, so Greg, how about for the next meeting, do you think you'd be able to, I know you're a busy guy, but would you be able to come up with a couple options? Or if there's no option, tell us there's no option.
Well, I think, what I'm talking about as far as permanently changing the road, that's an expensive kind of project that you're going to plan for, not anytime in the next couple of months. But the speed signs, if you want to put up more of those speed signs, that's not hugely expensive. I think they're a couple $1,000s a piece. We can look at where you'd like to see those Blodgett Drive up and down. And I can talk to New York State DOT about whether we can put those on Lettuce Highway, or they could.
The last thing I would add is the other, I think one of the biggest things that changes how people drive on particular roads is reputation. I'm sure I'm not the only one that hears, the stories of, oh, you have to drive slow here because there's always police officers here, that there's been lots of tickets given on this street and not so much this street. And it's so that also has an impact on behavior, and it's, whether there's any truth to it, who knows, but it's just rumor. Okay. I'm going to jump around on this because I'm suspecting we have a couple things on the agenda that'll go relatively quicker than others. So, Greg, if you don't mind, can we jump ahead to the Water Street dumpsters? I don't have a background on this at all, so go ahead and fill us all in.
Sure. So I think this was in the early 2000s, there was a project to improve Water Street. And at the time, there were dumpsters for every business or building along the street, and it was unsightly, and everyone wanted to improve that. So the city agreed to allow two haulers, it's Casella and Logan's, that use the space behind the cages underneath the parking garage ramp. And then each of the building owners can contract with whichever hauler they'd like to and use that space. And it was a great idea, but I think one piece of it that wasn't really accounted for was there's really no agreement that I found. I've looked for it, and there's no agreement between the city and the haulers to use that space, or between the city and the building owners. So anything that's not put in the cages themselves, that's left outside, such as furniture and mattresses that when kids move out of their apartments or whoever, they're just left out there. The haulers don't take them away. Then we get calls and complaints, and then the city DPW goes, picks them up, and disposes them for a fee at Casella. An amount, I don't know, I couldn't tell you exactly, but I know we spend probably $1,000 or more, probably more than that per year, dollars on disposing of that plus our time. And, we used to get complaints from Ed at Otsego Bicycle, who's right across from that it was unsightly. It wasn't well kept. It's a dumpster area. It's not something, the city obviously wouldn't go on private property and maintain a refuse area for building owners. But in this case, because it's on public property, it reflects poorly on the city if it's dirty. And I think what we just need to work with the haulers to come up, my recommendation, work with the haulers to come up with an agreement that they have to take care of the area, clean it, anything that's within or outside or in that general area outside of the cages is refuse, and dispose of that. And then it's up to them to work with their customers as to how to build that. I don't know how exactly that would work out. It's just something I want to engage in that conversation and figure out how we can solve the problem.
Okay, is there anything you're looking from us today?
Support in that respect, and I guess I'm not sure who should be the right person to reach out to the haulers, and how do we compel this? I mean, now they're using the space. I think at some point we need to tell them that the use of the space is going to be contingent upon having an agreement to use the space, and I'm not sure who should negotiate that.
So we need an official agreement for both haulers to use that space. A contract? Are we talking about charging for the space?
I wouldn't think so. I think it's for the public benefit to allow them to use the space, but I think there just needs to be some stipulations that the space is kept clean and that they take all of the garbage that's left there, not just what they consider to be in their, within the cage, and then leave everything else for the city. I mean, another alternative might be for the city to contract with the building owners or a group of building owners that have come together in some entity that we could contract with, so that they're required to take care of that space. But it seems to be easier since there's 2 haulers and I don't know how many customers.
Yeah, this isn't a new problem at all. But I don't see how this is any different than, like, I contract with Casella, and I know that if I put a piece of furniture at the side of the road or a mattress, they're not going to take it. And there's nothing I can do to make them take it. So, I mean, do we have the ability to create leverage to force anybody to take that?
Well, it's on it's on city property. It's not just in the right of way. It's actually on the parking garage parcel. So if we don't allow them to use that, they have nowhere else to put their dumpsters, because they don't have, they can't put it on the street. City code, you can't have your refuse in view of the city street. I mean, they could put it inside their building and take it out on garbage day, but they can't just leave a dumpster there. That was obviously, they're surrounded on all sides by street. They don't have a backyard to keep their garbage in. It was an agreement the city came to make things better. But
Do we have the ability to charge a fee to the building owners, the landlords there, to remove any furniture that's left?
the tough part is who do you bill?
Yeah, I know.
The furniture there. What we've tried to track that with cameras that haven't been successful.
Well, I was talking a blank, just an annual fee.
I would say if there was a group of building owners that use that space and the city were to contract either with them individually or as a group, if they were organized in some entity, then we could make that agreement and say any additional disposal costs that fall on the city will be billed equally or some way. Would be an option.
Any suggestions? Anybody? I mean, my initial, I mean, this is, like I said, this is not a new argument, not a new issue, but my initial instinct is to let somebody discuss with the, contact both of the disposals to see if, number one, to get a written agreement to allow them to use that space and see what they say about taking furniture. I don't know if Casella would be more willing to do it over Logan's. I don't know. Len?
So I feel that Greg is on the right path. I believe there's 6 building owners there, Greg, that you would be negotiating with.
I'm not sure. I'd have to see who.
Mark is nodding his head up and down. I believe there's 6.
That's pretty close, yeah.
Yeah. So to Greg's point, there's 6 building owners that would wish to be able to utilize that space, as he clearly communicated to us tonight that there is no other space for them to put their refuge. It's against the code. So it seems as though we have a leverage point to come up with an agreement that's applicable for both the building owners plus the city of Oneonta, and the haulers will have to abide by whatever the agreement is. At the end, if there are mattresses and furniture left over, then those building owners will have to accept the cost.
There's also leverage with the haulers. If we don't, overplay, our hand and we say we've got this issue and let them come up with the resolution for it. Their resolution may very well be the thing that we're looking to have accomplished.
But isn't this an issue, Greg? Correct me if I'm wrong, where there's certain building owners that are using those dumpsters, and then once or twice a year, that's when they get furniture just dumped from rogue people. They have no idea where it comes from. It comes from potentially other buildings that don't normally use the dumpster. Or am I
Yeah, I
wrong?
mean, it's more than once or twice a year. It's probably once or twice a month, but it could be anyone. Yeah, it could be their building occupants, or it could be someone who drives by and drops stuff off. I mean, I've seen that on the camera. We couldn't catch the person, but someone just pulled up and dumped some stuff off. And of course, that would be the concern of the haulers, is that now they're going to have to, and the customers, that they're going to have to pay for someone else's garbage that's dumped there. But the solution might be for the haulers or the building owners collectively to set up their own security camera of that area. I mean, I don't know. We can talk about that with them, but that's the problem we're having now.
Gary, do you have any suggestions on this one?
Well, like you said, this is an old story with no good solution. The only thing I question is, it was said that the building owners have no place to put a dumpster. Who owns the parking spaces?
There used to be a white line painted along there that was essentially the property line. So they're sort of mostly on private property, partially.
Well, they must be private property because there are signs on the buildings saying that these spaces may only be used for certain stores. So the building owners have an option of giving up a parking space to use the dumpster if they're not willing to enter into some kind of a responsibility agreement for using city space.
So if I can suggest, it might be worth reaching out to the building owners and the haulers to have a Zoom meeting to say, this is our issue, and we need to come up with an answer to this issue, and maybe have that group hash it out with us involved, obviously, and maybe come up with a solution rather than our trying to figure something out that we're going to have to have folks who are going to be unhappy, come see the light. So I would suggest, I would be happy to initiate, a Zoom meeting among the various principals to have them sit down in a Zoom and maybe figure out how to address this issue that's been going on for a long time and has to be resolved. We have all of this redirection of the energies around Oneonta's promotion moving to the Market Street and Water Street side of Main Street. It makes sense to take care of this kind of an issue. So I would reach out. I'm volunteering to reach out to these folks.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Mark, if you set something up, I'd be happy to participate in that conversation if you're going to have a Zoom meeting like you suggested.
Okay. Yeah, I got no guarantees that anything will work, but I feel like it makes sense to get them to the table.
Yeah. The only thing I would just add is our code does say, I just looked it up quick to make sure I wasn't misremembering. It says garbage and refuse shall be kept in such a place as not to constitute a nuisance. Garbage receptacles and bulk items shall not be stored in front yards or any location which is visible from the public right of way, except by special permission of the zoning board or under the following circumstances. It's got a couple of, so we just have to review that and make sure that whatever we do is compliance with that. I think that's the issue with if they put their dumpsters in their parking spaces.
So Greg, what I would wind up doing then is I'm going to confer with you. We will, determine what that messaging should be going out and who specifically that should go to. You'll have a better list of folks than I have. Mine is a lot more anecdotal. Yours is a lot more likely to be generated by some, some document. And so we will have a better chance of pulling everybody together. If we get together, you and I, we can probably get that done in the next couple of weeks.
Thanks,
Okay.
guys.
One of the other dynamics at play here is that historically, Water Street was designed as a back alley for deliveries and utilities and that type of thing. In recent years, the city has looked to make Water Street into more of a street. And Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the reasons that the city set up that site for the dumpsters was because we wanted to get the dumpsters off of the street and get them into, and so it was part of it was our initiative to set this space up because we wanted Water Street to be a place, not just to be a utility alley. And so, part of it is our own desire to change the nature of Water Street. So it's complicated and we all own part of it.
Agreed. Okay. Nobody has anything else to add. Let's move on. Brush and yard waste program. This is one that I brought up. I don't know if there's a good answer. I have, it's mainly one or two constituents that complain because as soon as they take care of their yard waste, they want to get rid of it. They don't have a lot of room to leave bags near the street, and they don't necessarily have a garage or a carport to keep the bags under and out of the elements. So basically their choice is either to time when they do their yard work perfectly and leave the bags near the side so the road so they don't get yanked away by students or whatnot, or they have to take it over to the recycling themselves, but that area is only open during the week. It's not open on Saturdays. And I believe it used to be open on Saturdays years ago when we had the ability to go in and get the key to unlock the gate. And the fear is if we just leave the gate completely open, that we'll have an accumulation of non-green waste being left there very quickly. So I'm not sure if there's, I had suggested possibly talking to the people that are working at the dump on the weekend to see if they'd be willing to unlock the gate on Saturdays and then lock it when they leave. I don't know if that's a possibility or not. I don't know if they'd be willing to anyway. So, Greg, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, like I said in the email, my concern is just that, unchecked people, the few will abuse that and have done that, even in cases where during the week, I think if no one's around, sometimes people just sneak in there and leave stuff. And maybe that's the cost of doing business. And we just have to deal with that. If we leave it open on Saturday, maybe it gets worse or maybe it doesn't. We could ask Casella if they'd be willing to unlock and relock the gate on Saturdays, but I think it's just maybe opening us to some more headaches than we normally have.
Doug?
Yeah, my guys can open or close that if you want. That's no big deal. We lock and open the walkway every day, and we lock up the bathrooms in the park every night. I think it's a 2003 key, isn't it, Craig?
Yep.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, it's yeah. We have a key to that. We can. I mean, we can't sit there and monitor it, but we can lock it and unlock it.
That would just be Saturday. I mean, we could establish hours.
Yeah, sure. We can open it at 10 and close it at 5, whatever you want. That's not a problem.
Well, that would be fantastic. If you feel that that's not going to be a burden for your department, though.
No,
Saturdays.
Each officer during their tour of duty is supposed to swing through there anyways, at least once. So we're down there. It's not a problem.
Okay. How long what time is the dump open on Saturday, Greg?
Geez, they open at like 7 in the morning, I think, don't they?
I'm not sure if it's just 7 to noon on Saturdays or if it's longer than that.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Okay. What's everybody else think? Anything that you want to add? Okay. Doug, that would be fantastic. Go ahead, Greg.
Sorry, I'm just concerned that there's going to be an added burden with either stuff disappearing or things appearing that shouldn't appear.
Yeah, I'd worry about things appearing, but I mean, just let me know if you want us to lock it or unlock it. We can do that whatever time.
Well, how about, as we were talking, I was wondering, is it possible for somebody that that really wants to do this, really wants to take their own bag of leaves over, can they just pull up to the gate and set it inside the gate and leave it? What's the implications of that come Monday?
You might have a pile of bags to move or other things. I mean, we've had issues with contractors coming in and trying to bring logs and whole trees they've taken down, which obviously isn't the intent of the program. I'm just a little worried that if people or contractors that are looking for a place to dump something when there's an open spot on Saturdays, we're going to find a lot more there.
Hey, can I chime in?
At the end of the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Well, what keeps them from dumping stuff in there right now, Greg?
On the weekend, I mean, the gate's locked. You know, they can.
No, during the week. What prevents them from dumping what they shouldn't dump in the green waste area?
Just having more eyes around, really. I mean, sometimes they do, but for the most, they're supposed to be pre-COVID. There's a sign, the gate's locked, and they're supposed to go to Central Garage and check in with the administrator there who, you know, checks their ID to see that they're from the city and is supposed to hold on to that. It's supposed to take the key, unlock the gate, go in and come back out. So we're just at least knowing when people are going in and out. Since COVID's happened, we've not been encouraging people to come into the building there. We've just left the gate unlocked and using the honor system that you're a city resident, you're disposing of brush and yard waste. And obviously DPW is around, they're coming and going. There's a good chance if a contractor or someone like that were to come in and try to dump a lot of stuff, we would notice that and say something.
Okay. Well, maybe what I'll do is I'll tell the one or two residents if they want to take their stuff over, they can take it in and walk it all the way back. I'm not sure what else to tell them. I'm afraid, I think you're right, Greg, that if we let the police open that, especially if it's open for 6 hours, I'd be afraid of what's left there on a weekend. And it might not necessarily be haulers that leave stuff there. It may be residents that take stuff over that way. So I think it sounds like it's a problem in my ward and not in anybody else's. So I'll deal with it and just let him know if he wants to really take it over. He's gonna have to walk it in. So we'll do that. Okay. Gateway signs.
I think that was a mix-up. It was supposed to be on the Finance Committee agenda.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to tell you what it is.
Sure, because I'm looking, as soon as I said gateway signs, I'm seeing my name next to it, and I'm wondering, what did I say I was doing with this? So sure, Greg, or Gary, please.
Okay. I assume it got also added to the Finance Committee agenda. Carrie can jump in. I think she's on and confirm.
There is a discussion as part of the donation. So yes, this does appear on the finance agenda as well.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. You'll recall there was a discussion back months ago about sponsors, logos on the gateway signs. The Future of Oneonta Foundation is donating $16,000 and change to the city of Oneonta. The Finance Committee will be asked to send on to council a motion to accept that donation. It is to pay for the primary cost of the two gateway signs, the two largest gateway signs, one on Lettuce Highway, one on South Main Street. Some of that money is money from the Preston Fund. I don't have it in front of me right now. That is money that is earmarked every year to go to the Otsego Chamber. The chamber has stated that they would like the money, that money that is earmarked to go to them, donated this year to the city to help support those two signs. So Future Voting Onto Foundation is donating $16,000, about $5,000 of which is money that's earmarked for the chamber, which the chamber has agreed to make a donation to. And so as such, they feel it's appropriate, we feel it's appropriate based upon past practice, that we acknowledge those donations on those two signs. So that one sign would acknowledge the donation made by FOF, and the other sign would acknowledge the donation made by the chamber. So the motion will be to accept the donations.
So it's a total of 16,000?
Correct, it's very generous.
Okay. Okay, I think where we had discussed was potentially putting up, since we have had other not-for-profit organizations on signs. Do we want to have an additional sign put up with a list of Oneonta not-for-profits?
It wasn't just not-for-profits, it was service organizations.
Service organization, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
service organizations.
Yeah, right now, I think we only have two official service organizations, Lions and Rotary. So yeah, we discussed the possibility, looking into the feasibility of putting up a sign just to recognize our two service organizations at an entranceway to the city, correct?
If we decide to do that, who would do the designing of it?
Typically, at most communities, you've probably all seen, it's usually just made up of two squares that are the logo of each of the service organization, and it states the time of their meeting, the date and time of their meeting. I would imagine typically the service organization pays for or creates the square with their logo on it, and then the community, city, village, whatever it may be, agrees to erect a sign in the public space for that purpose.
So do we want to approach Lions and Rotary about doing this?
I'm good with that, yes.
Len?
I guess first off, just a point of order, Greg Klein, if you can hear me, would you just mute your computer or whatever device that you're using, because we're getting background noise on you.
Okay. I wish I knew how to do that. I'll put you guys on hold and listen on the YouTube.
Okay.
Greg, I can mute you, and then when it's your turn to speak, I'll just unmute your microphone. And
Okay,
then that
thank
way
you.
you can still listen in. You're welcome.
So Dave, I think maybe the reason why this was on the planning's agenda also was that we had talked about this in council about the service organization. So I think maybe that's the reason why it was on our agenda. But didn't we, and I need clarification on this. Didn't we receive money for DRI for our gateway signs?
Yes, absolutely. The donation allows us to do more. So the number of signs, the quality of signs that we can pay for with DRI is of course limited. So this donation allows us to make sure we can do 5 gateway signs, including Chestnut Street, including East Main Street, including River Street, which we would not be able to afford if we, without this donation. So there's always more signs that we'd like to do than we can afford. This allows us to do more.
Great. So we could actually put our service organizations, I guess there's only 2. I thought there was 3, but if there's only 2, we could get them on the locations that they historically have been. And the other 3 locations, we could completely allow these groups from FOF and the chamber. Looks like the Clarence Preston Trust Income is one, and the FOF is another one, and the Robert and Joan Moyer Trust, another one.
Now, let me just clarify. It's really 2 things. The FOF Robert Moyer is all one, And the Preston and Chamber is all one as well. So there's only two entities. I didn't follow what you said, Len, about the other three signs.
But I think we've had some discussion about maybe creating another sign for the service organizations, but if we just, if this donation is allowing us to say have three new signs rather than two, then we could probably just put the service organizations on the two signs and allow this group that's making the $16,000 donation on the other three signs. I'm just throwing that out there for an idea.
No, because the groups that are paying this very generous donation of $16,000 would like to be acknowledged on the two primary signs, which is the Lettuce Highway and South Main Street. Those are the most expensive signs. Those are the signs that they're paying for primarily. And with the very generous donation they're making, they are requesting to be acknowledged on those signs. And I think that's more than appropriate.
Right. So I think we're in agreement. It's just maybe the locations are different.
Correct. We could look at putting the service organizations with the other signs at the other three locations. Those signs tend to be smaller, so it's a little more cramped, but we can figure something out.
Great.
Okay, so just so I'm a little confused here. We're talking about that with the service organizations, there would be three different locations. Is that, did I hear that right? Okay, and where are those locations?
I mean, I would actually recommend, I'm not dug in on this either way, but I would actually recommend looking at installing separate signs on Lettuce Highway for the service organizations, because that gets the most traffic. It'll be seen by the most people. I think they will appreciate it the most and have the most impact. But that's just my own personal feeling.
Do we have the money for that, Gary? I just don't know.
Well, again, typically those signs are very simple. You see them in every community. Just a little logo sign for each with the hours of the meetings. They're very inexpensive. And we can either ask the service organizations to pay for the little sign and we will install it, put up the pole, erect it, use our property. Or if you want to, pay for it ourselves, we could do that. I don't think we're talking about very much money one way or another.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so this isn't fully related, but it's tangentially related. I'm wondering if there's going to be a time in the future where we'll see, we have, I think it's over $250,000 that is earmarked for the wayfinding signage, if I remember the RFP. And that's a lot of money, and that should cover a lot of signs. And I don't know that I've seen how that money specifically is being spent on what signs, at what price, in what locations. And I wonder at what point will we see that?
That's available. I mean, I think, if you want to see it, the breakdown, that's no problem. Keep in mind, there are two things going on here. Wayfinding signs and welcome signs, two different things. The wayfinding signs are inside the city themselves. So that's directing people to important locations like parking lots, downtown, so on and so on. That Greg has been working on that in terms of the important locations for the signs and the destinations that are being earmarked. Those really will replace those neon color signs that were put up about 15 years ago, which people say really doesn't fit the character of our downtown. So that is one piece. The other piece are the welcome signs. And the total budget is, I don't recall the amount, but it's to pay for both the design of the signs, the construction of the signs, the fabrication of the sign, and the fabrication of the signs. I believe that Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that you have agreed to do the installation, again, to stretch our dollars further so that we can get more done.
Yeah, so I would actually, Greg, love to at one point or another just be able to put my eyes on the expenditure and the locations and all the rest. I might actually even be able to help with some of that.
Okay. Yeah, my next step is reviewing each of the individual locations and kind of finalizing where those are going to go and what language is on each of them. Once I get like a final draft, I can share it with you.
So where we're at now is the welcome signs are ready to go to fabrication because we know the locations. There's no question with the locations. The wayfinding signs are not ready to go to fabrication because the exact locations and destinations are still being worked on.
Okay, so as far as the welcoming signs, oh, Len, go ahead.
Maybe we're going to ask the same question. So, Gary, right now you're kind of moving forward with the welcome signs. So 2 out of the 3 welcome signs will have the donators. Is what you're suggesting, that the donators will be on those 2 signs, and then there won't be anything on the other 3 signs. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's what I would recommend. First, if those signs on Chestnut Street, East Main Street, River Street are quite small because there's just not room on the road for a bigger sign. And I think that the service organizations would be happier with having a separate sign on Lettuce Highway where you get the greatest traffic.
Has anybody contacted Lions or Rotary about having a sign put up?
I spoke with Rotary. They would greatly appreciate the opportunity.
Okay. So what we're talking about is having them pay for the sign and we installing it, perhaps. Len, go ahead.
Gary did Rotary, I did Lions. They also would like to have acknowledgement. They were just having a little difficulty with the amount that was being suggested earlier, so we can help them out. That'd be all right.
So are we talking, wait a second, are we talking that the city is going to pay for their signs now?
That's a decision for the council to make. Imagine they're very inexpensive.
Right.
You're probably talking, you're probably talking a sign that's going to cost $100 and it's going to be up for 20 years.
I'm perfectly fine with it. I just want to be clear what we're looking to do here. And do we need to do is there any action that we need to do from this group to make it happen? Especially if it's only $100.
I'm guessing at the price.
I agree with Gary. If they're that inexpensive, I sincerely doubt that either one of the service clubs are going to have an issue with it. It was just the amount was just a little bit higher than that before. I think it's something, I don't know who on city staff actually does signs for us anymore. DPW used to do it. Do we outsource that now, or?
No, we make most of our own signs. Depending on the size and what is on it, we can possibly make these. But it might be something we outsource. But even then, it wouldn't be more than a few $100s probably.
Right. So to Gary's point, let's just find out how much it is, and we'll go from there.
Whose job is it to find out how much it is to make up a sign?
Well, on my screen, the 2 G's, Gary and Greg, are in the center.
Just need to tell me, someone needs to design the sign, the symbol, and the size and the colors, that sort of thing. And then if I have a sign design, I can find a price for it.
Funny, Len Carson is the center person on my screen.
How about if Gary and Len contacts again Lions and Rotary, have them come up with a template of what they want on a sign, and then we can give that to Greg to then price it out.
Gary, I'm sure you have enough to do. I'll contact Rotary and Lions and go from there. How's that?
Thank you, Lem.
All right, I think we can go to the Film Commission. I think Greg's waited long enough for us here. Greg Klein, that is.
I've unmuted him. There we go.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. I apologize. I have to be at the Village of Cooperstown at 6:30, so I've only got a few minutes. So if I do need to come back, that would be fine. But I just wanted to give a little broad outline of where we are. I know it's been a couple of years since I spoke to the city. After sort of making the rounds and trying to get a film commission office started under somebody's, umbrella, we realized that it was something that we probably had to do privately. So this year we met and formed a board of directors. I was voted the board president. We filed with the state as a 501c6 under the name the Cooperstown Oneonta-Otsego County Film Partnership, Inc. We also got a DBA as Film Coop, which is not only short for Cooperstown, but also for Cooperstown Oneonta-Otsego Partnership. We have a website up. It's sort of in beta mode. Not all the links work yet, but it's film-coop.com. And we have an 11-person board. We did get a very generous grant from the CJ Helig Foundation to get us going, as well as a board give from all our board members. And right now, we've just mostly been focusing on getting our shingle up, getting legal, getting registered with the state, getting up on the state ESD Regional Film Office website. But the one thing that we've run into both with the state and with the trade organization for film commissions, the AFCI, Association of Film Commissioners International, is that both of them would like us to be certified by the regions or the municipalities that we claim to represent. So we're just really starting the process. I've been to the county IGA and they unanimously approved, and it's going to go to the full county board on September 2nd. We'll actually have Dave Bliss sign our paperwork with the AFCI, which is part of what we need to register with them. I did have a conversation last week with the ESD people, Yanni and Jerry, and they said the same thing, that they would like to see some sort of official recognition from our municipalities saying that we are official, that we're the official film commission for, in this case, the county, the state, the county, the city, and the village. And ultimately, we'll probably go to all the towns that we hope to represent. But, obviously, to go to 20 towns and 10 villages is a little much. So we're starting with the people whose name is on the marquee. And that's kind of where we are right now. I know you guys had a good example of what happens when a film comes to town, what they might need in terms of permits and road closures and other things. And hopefully, at some point, we can also come back and talk about what it would be like to have an official city permit or official fees. Or I know there were some questions last week about, what if they need a police officer? What if they need a fire official? What if they want to use our vehicles? What if they want to use our buildings? And all of that can be standardized along the way, including if you needed to, overtime. So it wouldn't have to be the chief of police. You could just pass the cost along if that was the case. I think that was one of the concerns last week. So that's sort of where we are. If you guys have any questions, though, I'd be happy to answer them.
Greg, so basically the purpose of the Film Commission would be to help the city if somebody came in and they wanted to do a film in our area. You would help us walk through that process. Am I right?
Yeah, in the broadest terms, a film commission or a film commissioner is the agent for an area. So we essentially would be going out to the film industry and saying, hey, we have a great place to shoot here in Otsego County. We have a city, we have villages, we have this, we have that, we have great architecture, we have 2 lakes, we have farms, we have whatever it is they need. We have the workforce, we have permits available. But then also the second thing is that we are the liaison between the businesses, the films that want to come in or the TV shows that want to come in and the municipalities. So in your case, if there was nothing in place, then we would help you guys put something in place. But if there was something in place, then we could easily direct them to, okay, here's the city website where they have the permits, here's the village website where they have the permits, here's the county website, and so on and so forth.
Anybody else have any questions for Greg at all? Len?
So Greg, given the previous filming that just happened over the weekend, and it sounds like it went off without a hitch, there was just some questions. You would be that buffer between municipal government and the film group? Is that the way I understand it?
Yeah, typically, if somebody is interested in your region, I mean, assuming that it's not outreach that we've brought them in, but if somebody is, I mean, that's why it's so important to be up on the ESD site so that somebody can see us, or that, somebody knows that we're here to contact us. But typically, if it works that way, they would contact us and say, we're interested in filming in the city of Oneonta. What do we need to do? And then we can help them get in touch with the mayor, get in touch with the office, get in touch with the clerk, find the right permits, find out what the fees are, and so on and so forth. A film office doesn't always participate in the day-to-day filming that a film does, but they're sort of there as a reference, both directions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, so Greg, can you describe a little bit what the outreach efforts might look like in terms of solicitation of film or video to take place in the city area?
Yeah, so again, the first thing is to get up on the state website so that we have our shingle up there. If you look right now, there's not even a region as to where we are, let alone our specific film office. It starts with the Capital District, goes to Central New York, Finger Lakes, Long Island, Mid-Hudson, New York City, Western New York, and that's it. That's all that's on the website. But the other thing that we would do in a perfect world in a different year is we would be doing a lot of outreach to film festivals, in particular film festivals around the state where people who have already made films in the state would be showing their films or networking. So it's a lot of networking, a lot of outreach. At some point, we would print up brochures that highlight the region, or, there's a lot of souvenirs sometimes that you pass out at these things, like a film coupe baseball bat keychain or something along those lines, just to get just to get your name out there and to get your website out there and so on and so forth. We were hoping to go to the AFCI convention, which this year was going to be in Buffalo, Niagara, which we thought would sort of be our unveiling. But that's a big thing as well. The AFCI really has a lot of connections with film producers. And as you guys can imagine, this is a point in time where people don't want to film in New York City or LA. And so they're looking for places like this, specifically to go and film where they can, cheaply quarantine if they need to, where they can bring a small workforce if they need to, where they can, film in a place that you don't have to worry about some of the things that you would have to worry about in the cities right now.
You mentioned the film festivals. Is there anybody on that board who's aspirational around the creation of a film festival? I know I've actually been involved with a couple in the larger Catskill area, and of course Cooperstown has typically done what they do, yearly. Is there anybody on that board that's thinking along those lines?
We are. We do have, we've divided up into committees, and we have some subcommittees that we're working on. One is sort of a long-term planning, which is more for, not just the film commission office, which is really the first step, but building out a whole film industry in the region. But also we're talking about a destination, weekend event that revolves around film, and whether that's in partnership with the Glimmerglass Festival, we've started preliminary talks with them about that, or whether it's a different weekend, maybe in October, where there's been some vacancies in the calendar. Obviously, again, not this year, but it's something that we do hope to develop in the future.
Thanks an awful lot, Greg.
So at this point, if we're going to do this, this would go forward to the council. And Gary, would we need a resolution for this? What do we need?
I would think so.
Can we have Dave Merzig write something up, or do we have something? Greg, do you have something on hand that we could use?
I do. The AFCI drafted something for us at the request of the Village of Cooperstown, and both the village and the county have already seen it. So I'd be happy to forward it to Gary as well.
Okay, if you could do that, does anybody have any objection to moving this forward to the council? Okay. Yeah, that'd be great if you could forward that to the mayor, and we'll get it on the agenda for the council. So,
Okay, will do.
all right, great. Thanks for bringing this to us. This is an exciting thing, and we'll let you get on your way up to Cooperstown.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks, Greg. I thought we have one more item here. I thought Katie was going to stick around because she had questions to ask, but I guess not. Or not Katie. Yeah, Katie LaPerry. Or was that somebody else that asked to ask a question earlier and I totally missed it?
That was Councilmember Lepari. She signed off shortly after.
Okay, I'm going to send her a quick note here and tell her we're on the last item.
And Dave, when you get a chance, I have one update to provide you on regarding the reopening of the colleges.
Okay. Give me just a second here. Okay. All right. The economic developer, that was an issue we'd brought up before. Len and I actually wanted to have this, start the discussions on this. I'll be honest, I started looking everywhere online I could for what municipalities use economic developers. And it was kind of like a mess what I was finding. I wasn't finding any specific information like, oh, the city of Albany uses an economic developer on staff, or Cortland has one on staff, or whatnot. Definitely not in New York State, but what I found a lot was groups like the IGA were using them, obviously, and that's what a lot of municipalities go to the for their economic development. They go through the IGA like what we do. So then looking at the job descriptions of what they do, I thought there's overlap here with what Judy is doing. So I contacted Judy to see if she could give some insight, and invited her to our meeting today. She said she was going to try to, but she also has some things going on at home with family, I believe. I don't want to go into detail that she wasn't sure that she'd be able to make the meeting. But one thing she did say is before, and I agree with this, if before we decide to go forward with this, we need to figure out exactly what we're looking to get out of it, because obviously we don't want to do something that's going to interfere with what the IGA is doing. But I'm sure I'm not the only one that's thinking that the IGA is not really doing their job is not really to help our Main Street out. So unless anybody else has anything to add, I mean, I would suggest we wait until we can have Judy come and talk to us a little bit more to maybe walk us through the preliminaries. I don't think we have a rush on this. Unless anybody has any other ideas, I mean, I can certainly go either way with this. Len, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I'm just thinking, I'm thankful that we're actually discussing this, because for me, I'd like to see somebody that is focused, result-driven on the existing property, whether they already have buildings or not. But we have a rail yard that is in the city of Oneonta, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem to be populated by the IDA. It doesn't seem to be their focus. But I would like to see us look at an individual that is result-driven.
Right.
And what the compensation is for that.
Well,
you know, we
that's
can have a lot of
found out.
Yeah, we can have a lot of different discussions on that, but
I
just don't want us to hire someone to hire them to be our economic developer. I'd rather reverse the role and say, all right, we'll compensate you based on the results that we get.
Yeah, I did see some of that also, and I saw the compensation ranging anywhere from, per project, and it could to starting at $50,000 a year all the way up to $300,000 a year.
Yeah,
So there was no way for me to narrow down like what's a typical thing for our
Right.
municipality. So
well, results
can-
driven, Dave, would be based on percentage. Like we would,
Right.
as a group, say, okay, you're going to get 1% or whatever that project totals out at. And it's not just gathering the initial investment. Maybe it's based on rental or whatever the opportunity is.
no, I get that, and that was certainly one of the things I read about, but that was one of like many different
Absolutely.
options. And what I couldn't find is what works for a municipality for our size. I just
Right.
couldn't see that. Mark Drenick, you had something?
So my thinking is that I'm all for an economic developer in theory, but I feel like first of all we really need to know specifically what that person would be tasked with, what would be the goals. And I'm a big believer personally in the organic growth of a retail area, but I feel like we have, in other words, we have a lot of businesses right now that people were making fun of a couple of years ago that are likely to be the cutting edge of an arts community. The tattoo parlors, for instance, we have some real artists on the street right now, and that's starting to move a whole new vibe on the street, which is likely to help us. So, so we don't know. Like I say, the organic growth of a retail district, I'm one that believes in that. But on the other hand, we have a marketing committee right now that is looking at a pretty good budget. This is through the Survive and Thrive Task Force marketing committee that's looking at bringing in folks that are telecommuters potentially, and that would encompass so many industries. And we have so many opportunities within our second and third floors within our downtown, which would put people there, would put shoppers there, would be a huge boon to the retail environment. That would be something that I think that as a group we'd want to have a handle on. What do we want them to do, and working with the marketing committee specifically, who are they trying to target and how can they facilitate whatever the marketing committee is able to generate in terms of interest. How can they essentially close the deal?
Right. Well,
A couple of thoughts, Dave, on this. One regarding the rail yard. Len mentioned the rail yard.
Yeah.
That is the IDA's project. They've invested heavily in it. They put a lot of money into it. They've got plans. They're moving forward. I'm going to, before we try to step on their toes on a project that they're heavily invested in, even though we have an interest, I'm going to recommend that we invite Jody to make a presentation to us, could be to the full council or the committee, to give us an update on where they're at with developing the rail yard and what their recruitment strategy is.
I think that should be an update for the full council, Gary. That's my suggestion.
I'll be happy to do that.
Okay. Does anybody? Yeah, Mark.
Yeah, so I certainly agree with the idea that we have a need for economic developer, and I think to Mark's point, and Len has made the same point, real clear goals, deliverables. I guess I'd like to take a step back and ask the question, and I think this is what you're trying to do, Dave, is understand how have other municipalities addressed this? Is it someone that's in-house that's hired, or are there opportunities to be able to hire consultants on a project basis where they're only paid depending on the project? So I guess I'd like to try to open our thoughts up to what's the best model to be able to do this, to accomplish what we want to accomplish.
Yeah, I would suggest we hold the discussion until we can have Judy here joining us. She may give us a little bit more insight. In the meantime, I would recommend everybody go out there and look on Google and see what other municipalities are doing, and maybe you can find something I can't. That's absolutely possible. Before you give an update, I'd like to open the floor to, I thought Scott was going to be here too, but he's not yet anyway. But I'd like to open the floor to Katie. I know she had some questions about at least one topic. Katie, go ahead. You're muted. I'm sending her a note here. Carrie, are you there?
I am.
Okay, can you unmute her?
Her settings, I can't, no.
Okay, I sent her a text. So, all right, well, in the meantime, oh, here she is.
Are you talking about me?
Yes, I was opening the floor to you.
Okay, great. So you guys talked about an hour ago about lawn and leaf pickup, and I think that that's not even the reason why I came, but now I've been kind of marinating on this. I would have loved to participate in a discussion around that service for our constituents, because it's something that I also hear about quite a bit. I think that, you know, being able to open the green waste place on Saturday is a really nice thing to do, and I really appreciate the chief volunteering to do that. But I think that what I would have loved for this committee to discuss, maybe we can discuss as a full board, is the fact that DPW just strictly doesn't have the ability at this point to provide that service for our constituents on a regular basis in the way that we used to, for a couple reasons: because they're understaffed, because they're consistently working on like bigger scale projects, and then, you know, things are being subcontracted out. So I think that it would have probably behooved us an hour ago to have that discussion and try to figure out if we could really troubleshoot what the root of the problem is. But I'm glad that you guys came up with kind of a Band-Aid for it, and hopefully we can have that discussion at another time. So thanks for allowing me to speak.
Katie, are you saying that there's constituents that are trying to drop off their own leaf bags on Saturday as well? Or like what part what part is DPW not able to do now that they used to be able to do?
Well, the lawn and leaf pickups are so spread out these days. You know, they're on specific days. You know, it's like one weekend a month. And like you said, Dave, if your free time is on the first weekend and your pickup isn't until the third weekend, you know, there isn't really much that you can do. So I think it would behoove us to really look at that public service and be able to figure out a way to make it make sense for our constituents and not be something where there are a ton of pain points and a lot of hoops they have to jump through. I agree that not being open on Saturday is one of those pain points, but we're still asking constituents to take their own green waste out at that point while we do provide the service of picking it up. I just think that if we planned right a little bit and we kind of took a look at the way that the DPW is being utilized, we might be able to come to some sort of solution that's really at the root of the problem. And also in that regard, alleviate Greg's concerns of there being sort of an unmanned, free for all out at the green waste on Saturdays. Like if we could figure out a way to give DPW the resources that they need in order to be able to do those pickups more consistently and more frequently, we would make our constituents more happier. I think that is probably a more holistic look at the problem. And yeah, that's what I had wanted to say.
Greg, typically when we do a pickup, how many guys from DPW are doing the pickup, and how long does it take them to cover 4 wards? Because it's usually broken up 4 wards in 1 week and then the other 4 wards the following week. So what do they do? How many guys are doing it per day, and are they working for 8 hours a day straight?
Yeah, it depends on obviously how much is being put out there, and we do every week, so twice a month in April, and then the same thing in October into November as needed, and then the rest of the months between we do once per month in each ward. We usually have 2 people that are doing that all week, plus additional help as needed. And I could talk to John Williams and just kind of get a better number to you as to how many hours we're spending per week on that. It is a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are only 8 people in that department. Is that correct?
There are 10 in the streets crew.
Okay.
Supervisors.
Well, when we started doing the schedule like this, we never went back to see, is it working to improve efficiency of the job? At least we didn't discuss it anyway at council. Is that something that's been looked at through DPW to see if, when we set that up under George, if it has improved the system?
It absolutely has improved it. I mean, when I first started, brush and yard waste pickup was through the streets department, and it was kind of just ongoing all the time. Whenever they had some guys available, to send them out and pick them up wherever over the city. And then at one point it went to the recreation departments, actually, when Steve Andrews was here, was scheduling appointments. People would call and say, I have brush and yard waste. And that was, I think, even less efficient. And then we moved to the schedule, and we try to communicate that, every 2 weeks or every month we would be coming through to try to get people to put it out at the same time, so we could go through the wards and only have to drive every street once. That's the idea. If everyone puts their brush pickup out by Monday at 7 a.m. of their week, then we can just go through each street once, and that's the most efficient way for us to pick it up. But obviously people don't always follow that. They might put it on a Wednesday, then we have to go back, and still, it's not perfectly efficient. I think bottom line is we used to have more people, before I worked here, or when I first started, they had been eliminating some positions through attrition over a number of years. So it comes down to priorities and level of service. What level of service do you want to provide in the brush and yard waste pickup program? And then you can look at every other task that DPW does. We could go over that over the course of the winter or something like that, over time, and talk about those things. And ultimately, I think that's how you have to make the decision, looking at everything that we do, prioritizing, and then determining what level of service do we want to provide and what will that take? What can we provide for certain staff and funding? If you want to make sense.
I love that, Greg. I think that's critical, because I think that those are the things that people feel in their daily lives. So I would be very interested in doing that if that's something that you would be willing to discuss with me.
Yeah, I think it's got to be something a little bit more of the long term or medium term. I would say, not long term, as in months. I can be working on kind of a summary of DPW operations, I guess, as part of the budget process, and then we can talk more about what we do and how we spend our time.
Yeah, that would be great. I just know, so like you, I live on Center Street, and I know that DPW was out demolishing the curbs, the existing curbs, which seems like something, and I in no way know anything about running a city. So I do defer to you, but I guess just to satisfy my curiosity, it seems like that's something that would be more easily subcontracted. And then, that would free up our really tight DPW team to be able to do some of those quality of life things that are really impacting our residents.
Yeah, I mean, we
have to interrupt this conversation because we have another meeting that's going to be starting. Sorry, guys. But I think if you want to talk more DPW stuff, Greg and Katie, please do so. And if you come up with any other solutions, bring them forward. I just wanted to give the floor to Gary really quick. Gary, you were going to give us an update on the colleges, and then we can turn this over to finance.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Real quick. The SUNY came back during the past week. Hartwick College students are due to come back in the coming week. I know there's been a lot of interest and concern given where we're at in the middle of a COVID pandemic, return students. So I wanted to give you information that I had. I received today the information that there are 2,073 students who have checked into the dorms on the SUNY campus. That is 67% of capacity, I am told. The information that I have, SUNY said they cannot give me the numbers. They don't have the numbers of students that are living off campus. Mark Drenick gave me an estimate in his conversations with the student landlords that it's somewhere between 75 and 90% capacity, or what the student landlords are saying. So it looks like we have somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 75 to 80% of the students, the SUNY students, have returned. The Hartwick students have not returned as of yet. We were all hoping, at least I was hoping, that we would all of our messaging, all of the recognition that this is a very unusual year, that we're facing a pandemic, would resonate and would modify some of typical student social behaviors. Unfortunately, that was not the case this weekend. Saturday night was not a good night for us. There were extensive house parties throughout the city, some large. There were very large groups of students roaming the streets, including downtown Main Street, not wearing masks. And overall, it was not a good night for us. Now, I think a couple of things are working against us. One is that the very stringent capacity reduction measures that are placed on the bars are leaving the students with no place to go. So they're looking, they're roaming around looking for parties elsewhere, because honestly, they can't get into the bars. I mean, the bars are, you know, the bars are pretty much shut with a line that you can't get in because their capacity is so greatly reduced. The other thing is the very, very tight restrictions on campus, where there's very little you can do socially on campus, are probably motivating students to come off campus at a higher rate. So this is a concern. We need to work hard to turn this around. Obviously, there's a health and safety concern here, as well as an economic concern. If the college is shut down because of an outbreak, it's in nobody's benefit. So I met with the chief today. You know, we'll be talking about strategies. I did request a meeting with President Morris to discuss this, strategize. She thought it was better addressed through the control group, which we have established, the first meeting of which is scheduled for a week from today. So, so that's where we stand. We have a lot of work to do to turn this around.
Gary, or maybe this is a question for Doug. As far as the house parties go, were there any citations made, any tickets written? I mean, or were they not large, overly large parties?
Most of the calls we got when we got to the house was fairly small. People on the porch, 6 people on a porch, something like that, maybe 10 in the backyard. So we would issue warnings, let them know, and most of the kids were pretty compliant. A lot of the other ones we got were of large groups, and some of those groups were parties just breaking up. So we would try to find out where they were going, like that. We did issue 1 ticket for a noise for a party that was ongoing when we got there. And the report of that one came over the tip line that the mayor established. So we were able to issue that. When I get the report, I'll forward that to SUCO so they can handle it internally as well. We're also going to get a hold of the landlords of all the places that were reported and that people were at, just so that the landlords are aware that even though there was only 6 people on the porch, it's on our radar now. We're trying to see what we can do for this next weekend coming up, maybe do some preemptive talking to the residents of these places that were reported, and to have to be able to come down a little bit harder on them if we need to.
And if I could add, the student landlords, for the most part, have been very, very cooperative. They want the same thing that we want. You know, I've had conversations with a number of them. Rick Weinberg called me the other night. They don't want to see parties. They don't want to see problems. They don't want to see a shutdown. You know, they want to, they've been all willing to distribute my welcome letter. So they've been very good. I will say the same for most of our bar owners.
Good.
They have also had the right attitude, and they are doing their best to enforce the reduced capacity, and they want the right thing as well. So I think, you know, our business community, you know, the chamber, everybody is very supportive. We're all looking for the same thing. We just need to turn the student behavior around.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Gary. I think when I saw the students first arriving, I saw a lot of masks. And then over the last few days, it seemed like I saw fewer and fewer and fewer. I think there's a lot of peer pressure, whether conscious or subconscious. There's a lot of peer pressure not to. So hold on a second. Oh no. Are you guys still there? Okay. Sorry. Had a phone call and it went into my Mac. So yeah, I'm hoping this improves. So we'll see what happens over the next week. All right, I have nothing else to add unless anybody else does.